right. Here we go. I think we got everything. All organized. Sunday night. Welcome back. Thanks for listening. You're here at Left Coast Love 2020, Sunday, October 18th, 2020, as we head into fall. This is episode 12 weeks in a row. So trying to keep to the schedule, trying to make sure if you're going to do this, make sure you stick to the plan. So welcome back this Sunday. We got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. And it was interesting because this was one of those Sundays where I didn't have an outline ready. So over the course of the day, had to start thinking about what to share tonight when I go online. So between all of the things that have happened here, I've landed on the main topic of signs, and we'll get to that. But this week we also saw the release of Tom Petty's last project that he was working on. If you've been listening over the past couple of weeks, I'm also going to talk about Rolling Stone Beer, another one of these mashups I just don't understand. Then we'll talk about signs, reading signs, and maybe a little bit about civil discourse. Then we'll switch back. That's going to get a little heady, and then we'll bring it back down. Flaming Lips. The Flaming Lips have a new crazy release that just came out this past week, and they've also did a concert, and I want to share how you do such a thing in today's environment. Then we'll do a quick reminder for John Wick Day, which is next Saturday. So make sure you mark that on your calendars. And if you go to johnwickday.com, all one word, johnwickday.com, there's information for the festivities I've planned. We're going to do a watch party. It's on Zoom. So we'll take a look at, we'll go through all three of the John Wick movies, as well as have some John Wick trivia in the chat. And I'll be opening up my John Wick box to mark the occasion. And then we'll wrap it up with a little bit about some current events in California around ballot boxes. And as you might have noticed, I'm a little shaggy today. My last COVID cut has about run its course. So we'll talk about what the next steps are there. So without any further ado, a big deal for me and hopefully a lot of you that are listening here. Otherwise, I think we have a lot of stuff in common. Otherwise, why would you bother wasting a half hour to 45 minutes listening to me blather each week? But Tom Petty, his estate, if you will, which is now run by his daughter, has released the Wildflowers project that Tom was working on at the time of his death. So Tom had released Wildflowers. It's often overlooked in the Tom Petty catalog, even though when it came out it was a monster. It was a monster record. There's lots of hits on it, but within the pantheon of the Tom Petty catalog, it didn't always seem to get the love that a lot of the other records did, even though it's probably one of the deepest Tom Petty records ever done. So interestingly enough, it was originally intended to be a double album, double CD, and for a number of reasons that you can read about online, it was trimmed down to be one disc. So basically what this set is looking to do was to bring into the Wildflowers, bad word, bubble, if you will, the second disc that never saw commercial release. And Tom and the usual suspects were cleaning those tracks up. Also included in this set are a lot of the home recordings, or in the old days we used to call these demos, but Tom Petty has some pretty good, his home recording equipment is probably on par with some smaller studios around the country. So his home demos are pretty well developed. and they fill out the set. The version that I got was the iTunes version, so there's about 54 tracks included. And as I went back to listen, because once I downloaded it, I decided that I was going to do the whole journey. So I was going to take it right from the first track and just go all the way through it. And while on the one hand, it was super heartwarming to revisit some of those songs, the first part of the collection, which is the original Wildflowers disc, and remember where I was and what I was doing at that time. And then it was also heartbreaking at the same time, because this is the last set of music, even though most of it was, all of it was recorded a while ago, that Tom put his hands on and was preparing to share with us. So these are tracks that Tom wanted us to listen to. He wanted us, he wanted these songs to be part of our lives as well. And I started off, before actually listening, there was, if you will, kind of an unboxing video. Tom Petty's daughter set up a Zoom call with Rick Rubin, who was the producer and was working with Tom Petty at the time, and I think it was Robert Frick from Rolling Stone, who was a friend of Tom's, but also, a well-known rock critic, writer of note, as well as the artists who worked on his videos and the imagery that was packaged along with his music, which was interesting because, for most of my time, I didn't really pay much attention to that part of it and just really focused in on the music. And this unboxing, or kind of quick journey through what people could expect if they went out and bought this, what they would get. And to hear Tom and the artists talk about, or Tom's daughter and the artists talk about how much thought and how many of Tom's ideas were incorporated into the later visuals that accompanied the music, whether it was concert posters, t-shirts, or the packaging for the music itself. Tom had a very strong hand in making sure that the imagery also fit his vision for, to go with the music. Some other things that I didn't know, I guess I could have known if I dug a little deeper, but during the video they talked about, on some of the tracks, how they did a little bit of remixing to pull up some things that were kind of taken for granted at the time, but now seem to carry a lot more weight. And there's a track included here called Hung Up and Overdue. And on that one track, you do get Tom Petty, but also Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys. And, Carl's another great talent that was lost to us far too young. And also Ringo Starr, who's obviously still with us, but is a talent in his own right. And of course he was a Beatle, so no explanation necessary. So you end up with this really magical track with Tom Petty and one of the Beach Boys and a Beatle. And as I'm describing it, you're probably like, well, how is that going to work? It actually works in a really interesting way, and it has a little bit of the Beach Boy vibe to it. It definitely has some Beatle influence, but it is unmistakably a Tom Petty track. And I think the extra attention and going back and kind of tinkering with the mix a little bit so that you can actually hear Carl Wilson's voice really, that was a little bit of a revelation as I was going through this. As I was listening to the music and thinking about all the Tom Petty shows I've seen over the years and how his releases over time have marked different milestones in my life. So my entree into Tom Petty began with Damn the Torpedoes. and that was Eileen Riley and Kathy Gordon and Matt Eli, and there's a couple other people that were early adopters of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I hadn't quite crossed over yet. I was still really into the Who and the Who catalog and digging through all of that. Eileen let me borrow the record, and this was back when we did listen to records on a turntable. And from the time I dropped the needle and the sound that came through, the thing that really sticks out in my mind about Damn the Torpedoes is the drum sound. It was just so big and thick and fat and just pushed everything. All the way through to Let Me Up, I've Had Enough. And that record came out when I was coming back from the Army. This was, I'm thinking, late 80s. Yeah, it had to be late 80s. My first apartment in Troy, New York. I had a roommate, Matt Eli, at the time. And it was, again, in hindsight, I don't know that I wouldn't want my daughter to have such an apartment, but it was, what we could afford at the time. And, you tend to be a lot more fearless when when you're younger. On a recent trip back to New York, I was in Troy, and my daughter was with me, and I wanted to take her down and show her the house. That it was a 2-family house, and Matt and I had the upstairs, and a family had the downstairs. But the building's been totally razed. It's all gone, and I think there's a parking lot there. It was just to the right, so there's a bridge. The bridge from, if you're coming down alternate Route 7, that kind of takes you into Troy and up Hoosick Street. If you take that first exit and go to the right, and it kind of brings you down onto, I think that's River Street, and had an apartment right after you crossed underneath the bridge. So it was a sketchy neighborhood back then at best. But anyways, and continuing to move forward. And the second concert I ever went to was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So this weekend has been both, like I said, heartwarming and heartbreaking, but it got me to think about a lot of the myths that have already started to kind of come up around Tom Petty. And again, I'm not here to speak ill of the dead or even try to, because again, I don't know what was going on and what his journey was. But the at the end there, the end of that tour, they marked Tom's death as an accidental overdose, and that makes it sound like perhaps he just miscalculated or something with some prescription drugs. He had a broken hip at the time that needed surgery, yet he was still touring and walking around on it and in a great deal of pain. So, but, when the autopsy came out, the drugs that were in his system were not prescription drugs. And again, I'm not judging or trying to make a statement about that, but I don't think it diminishes Tom or his art or his legacy or any of his messages to, I don't think we need to create myths. I think sometimes we'd be better served just taking a look at, the life and the art. And at the end of the day, it was the art that Tom wanted us to remember. And if in his passing there's a little bit of lesson for anybody else or for any of us, maybe, the worst, the thing you're putting off to take care of things in the present might actually might be one of the things, or the thing that you shouldn't put off and that you should address. So, what's really important and what's the long game. So again, I know Tom didn't plan for any of that. And I want to end on an upbeat note, which is at least, so you have two things after an artist passed away, right? So there is this rush to get music out, and help the family and the estate get set up, because over time there's very few artists that really maintain a high level of income, from their archives and into the estate, to keep being able to get newer, other music, or keep the old stuff out and available to us is important. So, there's a little bit of a cash grab here, but at least there's enough different versions of the material, everything from just a 2 CD set, which would give you basically what Tom had intended to be the commercial release, all the way up to an Uber. I'm trying to look at the picture here. I think it's a 9 LP set that includes books and stickers and notes and a canvas bag, and everything's all is put together with a design idea that is supposed to go along and enhance the music. So like I said, I really recommend, even if you just pick up the 2-disc set, it's glorious to hear Tom's music, and also to be able to dig in on some tracks that we were meant to hear but weren't given the opportunity. So there you go. Tom Petty, Wildflowers, Take 2 and Beyond. We give it a good recommendation. So next up, and I saved the box partly because I'm not much of a drinker. Haven't had a great history with it over the years, but I usually keep like a 4-pack or sometimes 2 4-packs of Guinness in the small fridge out in the garage, so if neighbors or people come by, I have something to offer. And as I was restocking, I looked on the shelf, and underneath the Guinness, the Guinness brown cans, I saw this box here. And I was like, what is that? I mean, I recognized the Rolling Stone magazine label, but the brown can, and of course, cleverly marketed, right? So it's positioned right by the Guinness to draw your attention to it. So I picked it up. Actually, I haven't. I've only had one, and it's okay. But because again, I'm not much of a drinker. But my neighbor, who's been coming over, and I've been sharing these with him, and he was telling me that this Elysian beer is actually kind of a high-end. I don't want to call it a microbrewery, but it is one of a boutique brewer, if you will, with a very good reputation and and a price premium. So the name Elysian, at least in his mind, was like, he was a little confused as well. He's like, I don't know that they really needed Rolling Stone. So, and again, I didn't really understand. They have some vague letter from the brewer. You're probably wondering what we're trying to do. Yep, good question. It's hard to say. We wanted to add a little more magic to the world. So Rolling Stone Lager is about embracing the spirit of music that transforms us, brings us together, and also sets us free. To describe it any further would be difficult without sounding like bullshit, and bullshit is like gathering moss. All right. Okay, word soup there. Absolutely doesn't mean anything. Still don't understand it, but I'm adding it to the file of, was anyone really asking for this? And I'm just going to keep an eye to see how long it hangs around. I don't know that this is going to burn up the beer charts. But there you go. Another thing I don't know that anybody was asking for, but they're going to try to create space for themselves. So there you go. All right, people. Not so much a rant, but let's just call this a little bit of a discussion. I'm calling this signs, and um, especially as we get closer to the election and we get pushed further and further away from friends, family, and community as the pandemic winds on, and still working through the digital transformation that's happening all around us, where um, people and organizations are becoming much more, we talked about this last week, comfortable with the virtual, in addition to the physical, or in some case purely the virtual. And how we treat each other and talk to each other is been on my mind a lot. And initially I thought it was just kind of a visceral reaction to how confrontational and angry it just seems, at least where I live, when we're out and about just doing our daily activities of shopping or trying to get haircuts or at the gas station. The few times where we interact with the public at large, I feel like we really have to be on guard and looking around, because for one reason or another, people feel openly emboldened to just come up or start engaging in a very aggressive and confrontational way to people they don't even know or aren't even in their sphere or are not impeding on their space at all. And I think that we're using signs in ways both overt and covert that I think we all need to be tuned in a lot better to. And since we are interacting online so much more, especially in today's environment, the stakes are so much higher. People are already on edge, and in some cases, being further pushed away into kind of different groups based upon, both the media, how the media is defining us, and how our social media is starting to define us and recognize us. And I had some interactions on Facebook this week that, I don't know, really made me kind of step back and think about things. And it was, in my mind, it was another example of, our, like, what are you trying to accomplish? And at this particular point, most of us have either, and this is what I mean about signs, are either overtly putting our signs that represent what our beliefs are, whether it be political or religious or, all of that stuff. If you just go through someone's Facebook feed, for the most part, you can get a pretty good idea of kind of where they sit. And then on top of that, over the past couple of years here, even people we've known our whole lives and even people in our family are putting more and more signs out there. And some of that, in the old days, it used to be bumper stickers or the cranky old guy on the corner, or, letters to the editor in a newspaper. But nowadays, people will walk right up to you while you're grocery shopping with your kid and attack you for either wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, or, because any number of things now, people feel empowered to just, force their particular view. And, for me, how I try to think about it now is, your social presence out there is like an extension of your house. And if you have a bunch of signs on your lawn, and I'm a friend of yours who doesn't particularly, agree with that sign, just because we know each other doesn't, give me the right to just walk in to your house and start, talking or looking to provoke or elicit a response because I don't share what, I'm not on the same page as the people in that house or in that yard. Or the same, idea of if my neighbor has a political sign up in their yard and it's not the one I would put in my yard, I don't know that, to me, the proper response is, if I want to reply to that, I would put the sign in my yard. I wouldn't go get the opposing sign and put it into their yard and then explain that, well, your sign is wrong and here's why, and it's my job to educate you. So, that's a pretty bold step unless, it's different when people come into your area, your space, into your bubble, if you will, because you've invited them. But I just, like I said, I think we could do a lot better job of, if you want to see what your neighbors are up to, if you want to take a look at it, that's well and good. That's what social media is there for. That's why you have people on your friends list that aren't necessarily, sharing the same view. And in some cases, I do want to see what they're putting up, because I'm never opposed to changing my mind or having something presented to me. But typically, it's not just, at least in the virtual world, just reposting, stuff that's obviously put together just to elicit a response. It's not actually thoughtful, academic, or taking in anything other than, just being overly loud. So it's kind of that whole push-pull thing, right? So, I'll put stuff in my world, and if you want to take a look at it and participate in the same way you would participate if we were at a barbecue in my house, or vice versa, if I'm at your home, I would want to make sure that I respect that person's space, and if there was anything so egregious or whatever, then I would not accept the invitation, or just, continue on my way. I don't know that just because you have a different opinion that, it's being neighborly to just go ahead and just jump in. It's not welcome. And I had enough other people comment around the same time, and even people, again, that don't agree with me, but agreed with the idea of, at least for those of us that supposedly have some sort of relationship, that we could take the extra step to try to be even more civil, given the fact of how things are in the world today. So as you're going out, take a look, listen, open your eyes, and, a good turn, whether it be turning the other cheek or just letting it go, is sometimes, the better way to go for your own mental health and your own balance, rather than continuing to engage. So enough of the signs. I know, a little gloomy, but here's something that's fun. So either love them or hate them, Flaming Lips. Not a big fan of everything they do, but I feel like they have some serious art out there, and there's a number of Flaming Lips records that I have that are really high in rotation. Now for me, the Flaming Lips, with how their releases come out, it's kind of all or nothing. Either I'm on board for the whole record, or this is going to be one of the ones that I pass over. But over the past I am old, probably 10 years, the Flaming Lips, or Mr. Coin here, has used a giant gerbil, or sometimes they're called hamster ball, as part of their stage act. And at different points in the show, he would climb into a bubble, if you will, and then use it to crowd surf, walk out over the audience, or just deliver a performance from the stage as yet another visual. And if you don't know who the Flaming Lips are, other than just by the name, if I had to describe, it would be, to me, it's almost Pink Floyd next generation. So rich visuals, albums that are a complete work of art. So thought and, goes into the entire presentation. Like I said, the whole record is a story or a statement. It's not just a collection of tracks, but also a lot of sonically very similar to Pink Floyd, in that they're obviously a rock band. There's electric instruments, but there's also a lot of what I would call orchestration in the production. Very rich, very sonically rich. Now, they've released a new record this week called American Head. So this is their commentary on the lockdowns and the increase. I think actually a couple of shows ago we talked about people home drinking, but there's also been an increase of drug use, both recreational and medicinal, over the course of the pandemic, and this is kind of their response to that. And recently they did a concert where they took the gerbil ball idea and placed all of the people that attended the show into these bubbles. And if you're on the YouTube feed, you can see I have a couple of pictures here. So it's one person per bubble, and once you're in, you can take your mask off, you can enjoy the show. Because the bubbles are filled with air, and there's a lot of space. There's space in there. You can be next to someone, but you're not in the same physical space as they are. Now, obviously, this limits the number of people you can have at a concert. And I'm also going to go out on a limb here and say this is probably going to create. I'm still kind of curious as to the mechanics of this. But just on the idea of okay, we went from a world where, and I think I've talked about this, how I've ushered at the music venues out here for years, and a lot of the shows I've worked at, especially some of the larger ones like the Stones or Bruce Springsteen, you get 50, 60,000 people packed into a stadium to, the past 8-9 months of having to watch concerts virtually, in these smaller settings, and now they're starting to do drive-ins. But, I don't know how soon it's going to be before we get to go into a concert hall or even a club to see a band. So cheers to the Flaming Lips for still giving us music after all of these years, and for trying to be innovative in thinking about how can we come together as a community to share their music in a live setting. I'm going to do a little more research. Maybe I'll come back next week, because I have to wonder, how do people get out of this and without contaminating the whole area, right? Because to me, right, if you're in the bubbles, isn't that sort of, all your, if you happen to be COVID positive or shedding, isn't all of that going to come out when they release the air from the giant bubble? So I'm not really sure how that works. Anyways, still, I think a pretty interesting idea. All right. Okay, people. Boo. Couple more weeks. And it's going to be Halloween. It's fall out here in California. So, of course, that means we're in for the last heat wave of the year. It's been brutal this week. But we've started to think about, as a neighborhood, how are we going to handle Halloween? And one of the things we've decided to do was, in lieu of a lot of the trick-or-treating or parties, is we've all been decorating our houses. We decorated them early and with lights and things, so the kids, at least in our cul-de-sac or our little bubble within a bubble here in Nevada, they could start to at least see some of the colors and some of the icons and things, and maybe get a little bit excited about Halloween. For trick-or-treating, we've gotten candy bags, and what we're going to do is, wear gloves and put our trick-or-treat candies into these individual bags, and then have them lined up on some tables at the end of our driveway. So we can be out there and people can either drive by with their kids in the costumes, or if they want to walk on the streets, they can come up and grab one of the candy bags and hopefully enjoy some of the candy. I get it. Some of the families won't want to pick up candy and bring it into their house, because I don't know that everybody's going to be doing what we're doing. But with my wife working in retail, we have boxes of gloves in the house. So making little trick-or-treat goodie bags with a couple of pieces of snack candy in it with the rubber glove or with the latex gloves on seems like a pretty easy lift. And maybe we'll just put a little, print off some little notes letting people know that at least we tried to take some care with the candy as they're deciding whether to let their kids eat it or not. Also, coming up, people, we talked about it last week, TikTok, but it's getting closer. So, again, at johnwickday.com are the details and the link. So next Saturday, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to open up the Zoom, and we're going to stream all of the John Wick movies. We're going to share the contents of my John Wick box. We'll do some chat trivia, and because of the nature of how I set up the link, I welcome you to drop in and drop out throughout the day. Even if you can't stay or watch an entire film, come in, leave a comment, or at the very least, sign the John Wick Day petition. It's been a slow burn over the past 2 years to try to get this to become at least an entertainment holiday, or at least it gives me something to goof around with during the month of October. So I think I'm looking forward to it. I did a watch party as part of my company meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we streamed a concert. We streamed a Beck concert from 2016, Hunter Mountain, and the technology held up, and everybody was able to watch the video and get a good clean sound out of it. And it was small enough that we were able to share our cameras. The chat became a very fun place. Again, even more so for the people that dropped in and dropped out when we're trying to pick up what was happening. We tried not to talk over the music and leave ourselves in the chat. But I encourage you to stop in and join us. It should be a good time. All right, back to some news. So here, this has been somewhat of a big deal out here in California the past couple of weeks. California, contrary to popular belief, or you know what, I give up. Believe what you want. It is, we do vote by mail out here. I think I've shared a couple of different times. It's actually a multi-step process. Is it perfect? Is there a chance that people can get more than one ballot? Of course. But if the process is followed, because prior to getting any ballots, we get a card in the mail saying, hey, you're registered to vote, and if you intend on voting by mail, please use this card to indicate that and update your signature. I'm like, ooh, update your signature. Okay, so someone's looking, or at least it gets scanned into a system that's going to compare the signature on the card I put here. And so we fill out those cards and send those back, and we use the regular old mail for that. There's no special drop boxes or any of that kind of stuff. And a funny thing happens. They manage to make it back to the Board of Elections, and they're scanned, and then a sample ballot is sent out. So I get a sample ballot. It tells you what the final ballot will look like. It has write-ups and descriptions of everything that is on the ballot, and different links to places to go to get more details. And then after that, then your ballot actually shows up. And so you can fill out your ballot and you sign it and you send it back. It also comes with a barcode that you pull off with both the barcode and one of those, I don't know, square, you can scan it with your phone, symbols on it. And from there, you can actually track your ballot to see when it arrives at the Board of Elections, when it's opened, and when it's counted. So, even if they sent me 6 ballots, if I fill out 6 ballots and send them all back and sign them and send them all back, a funny thing will happen. All of my ballots will be disqualified. If I fill out ballots that are in my name and sign them with different names, again, because the original ballots, even as mistakes, have my same name repeated, they will all be disqualified. Here in California, to make things even more confusing, because California is, love us or hate us, we're the state will go blue. There's no question about it. There's some counties around different parts of California that might lean more Republican, but overall, the state of California is Democrat. And the Republican Party out here has decided that, in addition to the drop boxes that are set up all over the place in California, if you don't want to place your ballot directly back into the mail, even though you signed your card and it got back and your sample ballot arrived in the mail, if for some reason you feel that last step just won't happen, you can drop it off into one of the boxes here, and they're very obvious. They are white with a bright yellow top and kind of a aquamarine blue, highlighting a band around the bottom with the particular county that the box is located in symbol and some information there. And now the Republican Party has gone out and added a whole bunch of different drop boxes that look different. I have a picture of one of them here on the Facebook page, and placed them in churches, businesses, the Republican Party offices, for, I guess, Republicans that don't feel safe putting their ballots into one of the official ballot boxes or placing them back into the mail. And this is actually illegal. And the state of California has sent out a cease and desist order to the Republican Party and asked them to take these boxes down. And the Republican Party has refused to do that because, again, they feel the election's going to be rigged. And, this is super dangerous because there's a couple of things. Now, what you might read online is, hey, this is no different because California allows what's called ballot harvesting. I know that sounds ugly, but what it means is on our mail-in ballots, if for some reason I can't leave my house and I don't want to place my ballot into the mail, I can have someone else return my ballot for me. But in order to do that, I have to indicate on my ballot who that person is. Who is the person that's dropping off my ballot? Now, so if, especially out here in California, if you're taking care of an elderly parent or whatever, those are the type of situations that are most likely where that type of scenario would occur. So because the state of California allows that, the GOP is saying, well, how is this any different than that? All we're doing is saying, hey, drop your ballots here and, trust us to bring them in. okay, well, that's going to do a couple of things. So, according to the California law, none of those ballots are going to have on them the indication of the person or the people that will ultimately drop them off at the Board of Elections or, whatever. So, once they're deposited that way by a third party without any indication on the ballot, those ballots run a really high risk of being disqualified right out of the gate. And because these ballots are coming from these Republican drop boxes, in a way, it almost feels like the Republicans of California are ceding that, well, hey, the state's going to go Democratic anyways. But if we take this particular action and all of these ballots are thrown out because of a technicality, which is not really a technicality because this is the law, this is how it's done. They're supposed to be marked as to who the third party is that's bringing them in. So if all of these ballots are disqualified and coincidentally they're all Republican, this is going to create, the narrative that, see, it was rigged. Look at all of these Republican ballots that were disqualified because they were Republican. And in fact, they're going to be disqualified because the process wasn't followed. If the Democrats did the same thing and collected the ballots without the indication on them, they also would be disqualified. So to me, it just seems like that's purely, this is purely a way to create a situation after the fact that then can be used to fill this narrative that, unless one party or unless a certain individual wins the election, if there's any other than one result, then the entire thing is rigged. And to prove that it's rigged, hey, let's look in California where they disqualified X whatever number of ballots because they were Republican. So there you go. That's my little rant on the ballot boxes. Again, I don't know if we wanted those collection boxes. Why didn't they request that some of the boxes be put in some of these other locations? Why wasn't there a drive or put out petitions to have boxes put in some of these other places? But, even placing, the GOP's placing collection boxes in churches. Again, we're supposed to have a separation between church and state. So if the state of California had tried to put these boxes in churches, it would have created a whole situation there. They would have been ordered to have them removed. But another group can put a set of boxes that serve the same function, and yet, that's okay. So, you know what? Like I said, it's just maddening right now, the depths and rather than just let things play out. If we could just let things play out the way we always have and go from there, I think we would be in a lot better place. So, speaking of better places, oh God, that's a scary picture. But as you might tell, I'm starting to get to the end of the line here on the COVID cut. And haven't had a proper haircut, I want to say, since February. Have invested in a set of clippers, since here in our cul-de-sac neighborhood, we have a couple of neighbors who cut their kids' hair and, can do a good enough job with a set of clippers. These days not looking for the high fashion. Basically, if you can just give me a nice even, cut all the way around on the top, with a set of, at number 2, I'm usually pretty good to go. Ideally, I'd want to keep the top at 3s, but you know what? I'm not gonna be picky. But I thought it was interesting because I got ready to, get ready for the next cut, and I pulled the clippers down from the shelf, And even, you know, in the age of COVID, you know, the marketing and the packaging just sort of cracked me up. I don't know that, you know, the skull and the razors and the skull with the beard and the hair helps make these any better clippers, but you know what? It got me to buy them, and they've been definitely getting the job done. They came with all the equipment. They hold a charge a good long time, and my neighbor's been able to use them on me a couple times to take me back down to the cut I got when I went to boot camp all those years ago. So next week, I think we'll probably be looking at clean shaven down here. Oh yeah, also giving an eyes a rest this week. So no shave, no contacts, no haircut, and full hippie regalia. So I guess to kind of stay on point, these are kind of my signs right now. Trying to surround myself with music and people and community that kind of keep us together in these difficult times and support each other. And as always, you know what? I can't say enough that, and I'm so flattered that you take the time to download, whether this is the first time you've listened to me or the last time you're going to listen to me. Thank you for your time and attention. This is, you know, at least for me, a great outlet each week. I like taking the time to think about kind of what were the high points of the week and stuff that I've been sharing and talking about, or would be talking about if I was out in the world on a more regular basis, with the anywhere from 1 to 16 of you that will take the time over the course of the next couple of weeks to download this. So sincerely, thank you, and back at you next Sunday at Leftcoastlove2020, and we'll use our royalty-free music to get us out, and I hope to see you next week. Thanks.